Abraham and hospitality is the way that God wired me to view money. So this was a natural tendency for me from the beginning. But when I was born in communistic Romania, and then when I was 6 years old, it fell. So the idea was that the most important thing in communism was not the people, not what the people wanted, even though I think there were like 20 million people in Romania. It was all about what that man, the dictator, and his wife wanted. So 20 million people were working solely for those two people who were in control of the whole country, and they are controlling people's lives. So people were feeling worthless, and they didn't have the teachings of God because it was forbidden to talk about God, to think about God. The churches were closed for 50 years or so. So people didn't have a healthy way of looking at money. And what happened was that they ended up putting money above people. So people were kind of like a disposable resource, but money, because there was none and everyone was poor, money was the most important thing. So this is what happens when we leave God out of the equation, then everything gets messed up. So I grew up in this environment where everyone put money above everything else. And then because I was wired by God to show hospitality and put people above money, then there was this friction between me and my parents and their beliefs and my tendencies. And then what happened was that because I grew up in an abusive environment, sometimes, well, basically, we always have two choices, no matter whether the environment is abusive or not, which is to do what we see or to do the opposite. But both of these are sins. If we do what we see, that's an iniquity. If we do the opposite, that's an inner vow. And in either case, it is dependent on people and it has nothing to do with what God wants us to do. So in my case, I actually developed this inner vow that I will always put people above money. And because it is a sin, I was blinded to what I was doing. So I was overdoing it. And then I thought really unhealthy things about money, and I tried to stay away from it. I tried to avoid it. And, there were, of course, other parts involved, other sins and iniquities and inner vows involved. So then when I picked up this book, I wanted to read what God says about money, and I wanted to let go of whatever it was that I used to believe, which clearly led me nowhere because I was overdoing it. And then, because I didn't have any other skills, then I ended up feeling entitled. Oh, look, I showed you that I care about you by spending money on you. And then when people didn't reciprocate, then I resented them, and then that was like a whole thing. So that's why in every subject, we need to learn what Jesus teaches us about this and just replace whatever it is unhealthy with his teachings and keep his commandments because we love him and not in dependency with other people. So I wanted to mention that even though my husband and I, so both of us, we both scored Jacob, and the trait is beauty. So we both me and my husband, we both enjoy spending money on beautiful things, but we are still very different. Even so, because we are not even 7-dimensional, we are multi-dimensional. So, for example, I prefer to buy beautiful things, and when I see something that I think is beautiful, I don't look at the price. So if something is expensive or less expensive, it doesn't play a role in my decision making. Of course, that's something that I need to learn, to stay within my budget, of course. But for example, my husband, the price does come into play, and he prefers more expensive, beautiful things. So just because we scored the same, kind of like just with the love languages or the apology languages, it's not just black and white. It's either this or it's not. It's more complex. Because even with the love languages, even if we have the same love language, there are different dialects. So you could say different dialects of the money types.